Hi, I'm Matt from Pocket Kiwi. I've been using PocketSmith now for over 5 years, and I noticed that so many reviews on YouTube are just full of AI generated content. I think it's time that a real human user creates a review for you so you can determine for yourself whether PocketSmith is the right tool. So let's dive in. PocketSmith has various paid plans. You can use PocketSmith for free, but you miss out on the automatic bank feeds feature. This means you'll be manually entering your bank transaction data into PocketSmith by importing something like a spreadsheet. In my opinion, it's not worth it. This is too difficult to maintain over the long run. Automatic bank feeds are an amazing feature that you can set and forget. So you'll need to have a look at PocketSmith in your currency and find out which PocketSmith plan is going to be right for you. Let's look inside PocketSmith. This is the PocketSmith dashboard page. It pulls together your data from across the platform in these handy visualizations. It will give you a snapshot of what's going on for your finances. But you don't have to take the default view. You can edit this dashboard and make changes to the various visualizations that are available to you so you can set it how you like. You might check this dashboard from time to time, but it's not where the real magic happens. I'm going to lead you through the process of how you would set up PocketSmith, and then we'll get into some more advanced options as we go through the platform piece by piece. When you're ready to connect your bank feeds, head to Manage and Feeds. It's likely that your bank from your country will be available to select. Typically, PocketSmith defaults to the most common banks in your region. Once you have selected your bank feeds and you have signed into your bank and selected which accounts you would like to import into PocketSmith, PocketSmith will begin to download up to 90 days worth of transactions from your bank. There are some settings that you can apply to your bank feed. You can state whether you want your feeds to come in and auto-categorize. I'll get into that in a bit more detail later. That is, taking the category labels from your bank for the transactions that are being imported, or whether you want to do the categorization yourself. I recommend doing the categorization yourself, and that gives you a bit more control over the categories where your expenses and your income is going, rather than relying on your bank categorization. So once you have selected your feeds, you will see your accounts listed in the account summary screen. And here are some sample accounts that have been created. A sample bank account, a sample credit card, and a sample asset, which we won't look into in too much detail here, but you can create manual assets and add transactions to those assets over time if you needed to. So a bank feed will import your transactions and give you the total for that bank account, the balance, and there are some settings that you can apply to each bank account, whether it's in positive or negative. You can change the account balance if for some reason there's a discrepancy with what happens at your bank. But then those transactions will start to come through into PocketSmith in all of their detail. So it tells you which bank account those transactions have come into, the amount that's associated with that. And here you can start to see the type of information that you can store against a transaction. You can put in a note if the information from the merchant isn't enough information for you to help you understand in the future what this transaction was for. You can always include it as a note, and you can create labels for your transactions. Maybe you're going on a holiday and you want to group all of your transactions under that particular holiday. And you can create a label for that holiday, and you can apply that label to a group of transactions in amongst your other daily expenses and those sorts of things. If you're transferring funds between accounts, you can also mark transactions and actually whole categories of transactions as transfers. So they don't then apply as income and expenses. They're just a transfer between accounts, and you'll see the money leaving one account as a negative and arriving in another account as a positive. But all we're looking at here is transactions. We haven't yet got to the point of working out how those are categorized, and that means we need to create some categories. With this test data, these categories already exist, but let me show you how you would create a category in the system. So here are our categories. So you're going to want to create a range of budget categories. Everybody is different, but there are going to be some common categories that everybody has. Transportation, entertainment, food, those sorts of things. I provide a list of common expense categories on Pocket Kiwi that you might like to use as a base, but everyone's going to have some different categories that they use themselves. So once you've got your categories in place, there are a lot of details under the category settings which I can go into later. But let's just start with creating those categories so that we can allocate transactions to the categories and we can set up budgets within those categories as well. So here are some base categories, and now we want to allocate some transactions to those categories. So we can do that one by one by selecting a particular transaction and categorizing it on a one-by-one basis. Or, and this is what you'll want to do at the start, you'll want to categorize transactions in bulk. So I might search for all fuel-related transactions, and that will filter this list down to only the items that I have searched for. And as a result of that, I can then apply this tick box, highlighting all items, and then I can categorize those items in bulk. You can imagine that when you import your first bank feeds, and it brings through up to 90 days worth of transactions, that you're going to have a lot of transactions to categorize. And this is the first thing about PocketSmith that you need to know. There is quite a lot of setup that you have to do when you take on PocketSmith. You've got to create your accounts and your bank feeds. You've got to create your categories, and then you've got to go through your transactions and allocate them to the categories. Now this is important because you want your transactions to fall into the budgets that you're about to create, and the categorization of transactions is the important part of that. But also you need to train the system to categorize automatically so that you don't have to manually allocate these transactions in the future. So for this particular transaction, if I want to say that when the merchant is Momotia, it is always going to be put to food, then I'll make this a category rule. And when I save that, it will be saved under that category as a rule. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. So now I have one category rule for food, and that is when the merchant is Momotia, I have a transaction, all the transactions under that merchant will be applied to the category of food. So you could imagine that you will be attending the same gas stations regularly, the same cafes and restaurants regularly. You'll be receiving income from the same sources regularly. You'll be going to the same grocery stores regularly. And you don't want to have to categorize those transactions manually every time. You want PocketSmith to categorize those transactions for you. And depending upon how varied are in the way that you purchase and the people that you earn income from, you might never have to come in to PocketSmith on a regular basis and categorize items. They might be mostly categorizing themselves for you. So when you come into PocketSmith, you'll see in your transactions list uncategorized items and items awaiting confirmation. The uncategorized items are the items that the system was not able to categorize for you as part of your rules. So you will need to manually categorize those. So the fixed cafe is going to be eating out, and I'm going to make this a category rule. And I can adjust the merchant name if I want to. Quite often, every gas station has the same prefix, but a different suffix. So you might want to shorten the category rule down to just the prefix so that you capture all of the different gas stations under that name instead of this specific one and that specific one. So you'll get used to how you categorize those to capture as many of the same sort of merchant as you possibly can. So now every time I go to the Fix Cafe, that's going to be under food as an eating out as an automatic. When they are categorized automatically, the system invites you to confirm that it made the correct choice. So in this particular case, it has allocated this restaurant to eating out, and you can just click OK and confirm the fact that yes, it got that right and you are happy with that. The same with this one here, this cafe, also in the same category. Okay, that's great. And you can just go through and tick, tick, tick if you're happy with what the system has done for you on your behalf. Once you've gone through the process of categorizing transactions, you can now create budgets. So here are a few budgets that have been created for us automatically. Salary and wages has been set as a 2-weekly budget. Household and food categories don't yet have a budget. Entertainment, $75 a week. Let's have a look at that expense budget. This is the budget page. This budget is for entertainment at $75. It repeats every week, and this is the start date. It's an expense budget, and it's for a particular bank account. Each one of these fields has some role to play in the reporting and the capabilities within the platform. So you might ask yourself, why do I need to apply a particular budget to a particular bank account? Within the platform, it is capable of telling you how much money you have left in your bank account, what's safe to spend and what's not safe to spend if you don't want to run out. So that's why you would apply a particular budget to a particular account. It gets into more and more detail the deeper you go, but you just need to be aware that these fields aren't there for just no reason. They all have a specific purpose. Some things you will use, some things you won't use. If you're the type of person that always likes to carry a bit of headroom in your account, so you're never likely to run out of funds on a weekly basis or between paychecks, then accounting for a forecast at a bank account level is probably not going to be as relevant to you because you're not looking at the safe balance to check to make sure you're not going to run out of funds that month. Others of you who fly a little closer to the wind, you can certainly get down into the real detail with PocketSmith and get it to show you what's safe to spend and what's not safe to spend. Let's have a look at the income budget now. In this particular case, this is an income budget, and it's set to repeat once every fortnight starting on the 4th of June 2025. So once we've got our budgets in place, we can start to see the total amount we have spent against what we have earned. We can also drill into the detail within each of these budgets. One of the other superpowers of PocketSmith is rollover budgets. You can decide whether you want expenses overspent in one period to take away from the available funds in the next period, or any savings that you've had on a particular budget within one period to be available to you in the following period. Or, alternatively, you can decide that you want a budget to stop at the end of the period and you don't want any under or overspent funds to be available or not available in the next period. So this is how you would do that. Let's look at entertainment. This is the entertainment category, and I will look at rollover options. I'm going to say that I want both underspent and overspent amounts to be tracked within PocketSmith. And this means if I spend too much, it's going to take it away from a future period. If I spend less, then that money is going to be available to me to spend in the next period. This is useful for a few reasons. You might have some budget categories that you would typically think of as annual budgets. You might be saving for a holiday and you want to annualize that budget so that you are expected to be saving a certain amount throughout the year. But with PocketSmith, when you set up an annual budget, it puts the annual budget into the cash flow statement for the start of the whole period. So when you're looking at your cash flow, you will see the entire budget apply, if I jump across to that now, at the beginning of the period. So if this is an annual budget starting in April 2025, you would see the whole budget amount in that one period. And that skews things a little, because if you're wanting to go on a $20,000 holiday and you budget it annually and you stick it all in April, then expenses forecast for that month will be $20,000. So alternatively, you might want to spread that budget out across the whole year and see it build up and grow over the period. So you might break that down to $3,000 a month, and then in the first month you will have forecast $3,000, in the second month you'll forecast $3,000, in the third month, etc. So it spreads out the building of that budget using rollover budgets, because you will have underspent and underspent and underspent, and it will grow over the period, and it makes it look a lot smoother than just if you dump the entire annual budget in that category right at the start. The other benefit with rollover budgets is what you can see with trends. So we turned entertainment into a rollover budget, and so you can see the underspent and overspent amount applying to the different categories. I think I need to apply that to the budget. Starting on the 6th of October, let me just move that earlier so that we can see it on our graph. Okay, so now in entertainment, we can see the underspent and overspent amounts moving into the following period. So at the start, we significantly underspent, and that became available to us in the following period. But then we significantly overspent, and then that was taken away from us in the period following. So you can see it gets pretty detailed when you overspend and underspend, and there's a lot going on in each of these bars and lines. But you can make sense of the fact that if you overspend, then that money's not going to be available to you in the following period. It was going along well until we got to August, and then we significantly overspent every month from then on. If we started to underspend, you would see this line come back into positive again. And if you've got a category where you overspend, then it gives you a good target, a good goal to focus on, to try and underspend on a consistent basis so you can get that line back up towards the average again and get back into positive. For my wife and I, it seems to be groceries that we always overspend, and we spend the whole year fighting to get that line back up into positive again so that we don't end the year overspent on that budget. Another comment about rollover budgets is they will roll over continuously. So if you budget for a year, you might want to reset your rollovers at the start of the year. So my wife and I, we budget for the tax year, and in New Zealand that ends on the 31st of March. So on the 1st of April, I come into PocketSmith, and no matter what's happened with our rollover budgets throughout the previous 1 year period, I will reset the rollovers to 0 again. so that we get to start afresh. If we've got off track and we're negative in the rollovers in a particular budget, or maybe we're in positive, then that's great. I want to start from zero again on the 1st of April with our new tax year, so that everything starts from the beginning, because we sit down and we agree the budget categories, the amount that we're going to spend, and then I set everything back to zero again and we start afresh. I don't need to carry the mistakes we made in the previous year for multiple years, keep continually trying to get those budgets back on track. I like to start afresh in the new period again, and then we move forward from there. So let's have a look at some of the reports that show you how you're going with your budget. First of all, simply the budget itself. You can see how much has been spent within a particular category and how much is left. Now let's move across to the income and expense. Now this is the top level budget for a period. I like to look at the income and expense budget for an annual period. So I can look at this and adjust the time period based on this little display here. This same pop-out that has come in selecting the date occurs across the whole of PocketSmith. So you'll become very familiar with how you switch different periods. But let's look at this year. I can see that budgeted for this year, I'm going to have a surplus of $4,282. And that's comprised of $21,000 worth of income and $17,000 worth of expenses. But my actual is only $116 because I've only yet earned $10,000, but my expenses have been very close to that. So I'm yet to realize the difference in the budget. It allows me to look at the difference and maybe make some adjustments to how I am earning or how I am spending. But this income and expense report is at a very high level. Let's drill into the detail within each category to determine what's happening within each of these budgets over a period. And that would be the trends report. When we look at the trends overall, we see that in June, July and August, we spent more than we earned. But in September, we had a good month and we earned more than we spent. Let's drill into a particular category to see how this breaks down. Salary and wages have been consistently on budget, with a shortfall in September. When we look at an expense like entertainment, we can see where we have underspent and where we have overspent. And this dotted average shows us whether we are significantly higher or lower overall across all the weeks. We seem to be doing okay. Our underspending seems to match our overspending in this case. Healthcare is an annual budget, so looking at it as a trend report isn't going to give us a lot of value. Food and household are not yet budgeted for, so we just see the actuals. Here's another for repaying our credit card with the unders and overs, and see this dotted line? That's showing us that we are significantly under spending, which is good for us. Let's have a look at another report. The cash flow statement gives us the opportunity to look ahead into the future. Again, I'll look at this financial period, but I'm going to add a few months on to the end. Move forward into the future as far as I can. And now as I scroll along this table, I can project forward all the way to April based on my forecast expenditure. And I can see that based on the surplus or deficit that I have been incurring or have planned to incur all the way through to April next year, that I will have a closing balance overall for all my accounts of $7,815, whereas where I sit today, it is $5,192. This is one of the strongest features of PocketSmith, is the ability to forecast forward based on your cash flow and see how your account balance is going to change overall as a result of your forecasted expenditure and income. Let's have a look at another report. My net worth. So, if you need to give yourself a pep talk about how things are going overall, you can look at your net worth graph of your assets versus your debts. You might not look at this very often, but it's good to check up every now and again to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. You might have a goal in mind for your net worth, what you want it to be in a few years. So you'll look at the cash flow report, see that things are heading in the right direction, and come here and look at your net worth every now and again to see it in reality, what's actually happening with the things that you own and owe. Another superpower of PocketSmith is the calendar. Earlier, when we were looking at budgets and applying dates to those budgets, PocketSmith applied those dates to when each of those expenses would fall due. So for example, we set a budget of $75 a week for entertainment, and we started that on a Wednesday. From now on Wednesday, we will see that the $75 a week for entertainment falls due in the calendar. The calendar is a valuable way for us to keep track on when our expenses are falling due, whether that be repeating expenses weekly or bills. So I can say that this particular budget is actually a bill that falls due on this date. Now PocketSmith won't spread this expense across the whole period of every week. It will apply it to the particular date that the bill falls due. And this is another factor when thinking about the balance that's associated with this account. If you have $500 in your account and this bill is $400, PocketSmith will keep tabs on that, and it will tell you that you are safe to spend $100 because there is a bill due within the period for this particular expense. Let's have another look at the calendar. Here we have other categories falling due on different days, and you can see what you would expect to spend over a particular period of time as a result of looking at this calendar. I personally don't use this calendar because the days of the month that particular things fall due aren't as relevant to me. I like to carry a little bit of headroom in my accounts to account for the variation in different bills that come in over the period. I'm aware of my financial position in any one particular occasion, so I don't need to particularly check on any given day what is coming in and out of my accounts. So I don't particularly use the calendar, but it is a useful tool for those of you who need to keep track of any big expenses that are coming out close to when you are receiving your income, just to make sure that you're on track with the outgoings associated with the incomes in your account. Let's have a look at PocketSmith on mobile. This is the PocketSmith Sidekick app, where you can do many of the functions that are available through the website in this app, but it is a little limited. The main things that you can do in here are view and categorize your transactions, view the full list of transactions that have come through recently, view your calendar for payments and budgets, view your budgets and access some detail on those budgets, including transactions and trends, and then the dashboard of the different items in here, your bank feeds, your net worth. And as I said, there are some limitations. For example, you can't split a transaction across two different categories through the app. PocketSmith, though, is working on their mobile capability. PocketSmith has a roadmap outlining their commitments to mobile. They're acknowledging that their mobile experience is limited at the moment, and they're making some improvements. For example, they're making a couple of changes to their Sidekick app. These changes include the ability to split transactions through the app and the ability to use different date options when reviewing the budget. But their long-term goal is to make the PocketSmith website entirely mobile responsive, essentially doing away with the need for the app because you'll be able to do everything that you want to do through the website on your mobile device. Well, I hope I covered everything that you wanted to know about PocketSmith, and that now you can make a more informed decision about whether PocketSmith is right for you. If I missed anything, please leave a comment and maybe I'll make a video about that too. Please subscribe because I hope to make more content about PocketSmith on behalf of Pocket Kiwi. If you are interested in signing up for PocketSmith, please use the link that I provide in the description. I've made this content for free, so every little bit helps. Thanks. All the best.